The boundless prairie sky hung over the farm, a crushing gray weight. For Sarah Harper, it wasn't a limitless hope, but a vast, empty expanse that had swallowed her husband, Isaac. Only a few days had passed, yet each hour felt like an eternity, filled with a silence where his laughter had recently been. The fence they had started mending together now stood half broken, a monument to their interrupted life. She felt less like a widow and more like a piece of wreckage washed ashore, with two small passengers in her care, Jamie, who tried to be strong but whose eyes were filled with fear, and Emma, too young to understand why Papa wouldn't be coming home. In her world, where every day was a fight, fear was her only companion. She would try to hide from it, but it would find her all the same, in the rustle of the wind, in the distant creak of a wagon. She knew she couldn't manage alone, not in this ruthless land where the only law was strength. It was in this moment of solitude, as she was trying, without success, to secure a wooden plank, that a rider approached her home. His silhouette on the horizon was menacing and foreign, completely unlike the farmers she knew. Dismounting, he revealed himself to be a tall, broad-shouldered man with a face marked by a deep scar from his temple to his chin. His eyes, gray and sharp as blades, seemed to see not her, but what was hiding behind her. This was Caleb Travis, a legend, but not the kind they told children before bed. His name was known in every saloon as the most ruthless bounty hunter. He offered no greeting, did not remove his hat. In a low, gravelly voice, he said he was looking for a man here, Michael Crow. He killed his brother, and he was seen in these parts. Sarah slowly shook her head, her heart pounding in her throat. She didn't know any Michael Crow. She only knew her Isaac and his killers. Caleb scowled, his gaze becoming even more piercing. He didn't believe her. Then his eyes shifted to the children, who, frightened, were peeking out from behind the door. He stated firmly that Crow was here, or had been here, and he'll be back. He said, I know him. He won't leave witnesses. His words were like a gut punch. Caleb slowly walked toward Sarah, his steps confident and heavy. He told her, with heavy confidence, that he needed a family, and she needed his protection. He was taking them under his wing. He stated, not asking, but demanding. These words hit Sarah like an icy downpour. Her breath caught in her throat from indignation and pain. He was talking about her family like a commodity, a pawn in his game. He saw her only as a means to an end. Pride and anger boiled up in her soul, and she wanted to push him away, to scream that her family was not for sale. But then her gaze fell upon the terrified faces of Jamie and Emma, and this wave of fury shattered against the cliff of despair. She was alone. She had no strength to protect her children from a world where men like Michael Crow and Caleb Travis decided fates. As if hypnotized, she nodded. It wasn't a deal, but a surrender. She was selling her freedom, her pride, and her husband's memory to buy her children one more day. The days following her decision blended into a gray, joyless stream. Caleb Travis's presence in their home was like a constant, dull ache. He fixed the fence, mended the flimsy door, but each of his actions was not a help, but rather a staking of territory. He moved through the house like a hunter, scanning every corner, his weapon always in plain sight. His silence, which once had been a mere trait, now felt heavy and suffocating. Jamie watched him with barely concealed hostility, and little Emma would hide behind her mother's skirt as soon as he entered the room. Sarah felt she was betraying Isaac's memory, allowing this stranger with his scar and cold eyes to take a place in their home. The house, which had been full of laughter and love, was now saturated with tense, silent anxiety. One evening, as Sarah was preparing dinner, a knock came at the door. On the doorstep stood an elderly, kind-hearted man, with soft eyes and a friendly smile. He introduced himself as Owen, an old friend of Isaac's. He said, in a soft, reassuring voice, that he had heard about her trouble. Isaac was like a brother to him, and he simply had to come and help. Sarah felt a wave of relief, which immediately mixed with despair that there was a man who could have been a friend. Yet she was forced to live with this ruthless bounty hunter instead. She invited Owen in, and he, sitting at the table, began telling stories about Isaac, sharing memories that Sarah had already begun to forget. For a moment, she believed that the world could be kind. But Caleb, appearing in the kitchen doorway, spoke up directly and coldly. He told her he knew this man, and he wasn't Owen. He was Michael Crow's right-hand man. Sarah's heart sank. She wanted to object, but the words caught in her throat. Caleb, without waiting, seized Owen and threw him to the floor. He found a revolver under his coat, and the man immediately stopped being a kind friend. Caleb twisted his arm, forcing him to drop the weapon, and his smile turned into a vicious snarl. Caleb hissed that Owen didn't come to help. He came to finish what he started. Owen didn't resist, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape. He nervously admitted that Michael wanted all the witnesses dead, and she and the children were the last ones. Sarah, frantic with fear, couldn't believe her eyes. This man, who had so convincingly played the part of a friend, was here to kill her and her children. In an instant, her hope in the world's kindness turned to dust. She realized her naive belief had nearly cost them their lives. She understood that Caleb, as frightening as he was the only protection in a world where she was surrounded not by friends, but by predators. It became clear to her that her own small world was merely part of a larger, more ruthless game, in which she was vulnerable, and her despair deepened. She had lost not only her husband, but her last faith in goodness, and her own weakness, which she had tried so hard to hide, was now staring her in the face. After the night when Owen came not as a friend but as a predator, the atmosphere on the farm changed. The fear didn't completely vanish, but it was no longer directed at Caleb. Sarah no longer saw him as a stranger with cruel eyes, but as a protector who stood between her children and a merciless world. She began to notice small details she had overlooked before. He wasn't just fixing the fence, he was making it stronger than Isaac had. He wasn't just sitting with a rifle, he was teaching Jamie how to handle it the way his father should have, with respect and caution, not for aggression, but for defense. One evening, after the children were asleep, Sarah approached Caleb, who was sitting by the fire. For the first time, she saw in his eyes not only a hunter's coldness, but a shadow of deep sadness. She quietly asked him who Michael Crow was, and why he had killed his brother. Caleb looked at the fire, his face becoming even more grim. He told her his story, his voice low, almost unrecognizable. Michael Crow was his partner, a man he had trusted like a brother. They had worked together, taking on the most dangerous bounties. But one day, Michael decided to go for an easier payout and set him up, making Caleb a scapegoat. In the fallout of that deal, Caleb's younger brother, who was entirely innocent, was killed. The scar on Caleb's face wasn't just a wound, but a constant reminder of the betrayal, of how easily everything could be lost. His obsession with finding Michael Crow wasn't just a hunt for a bounty, but a quest for justice. It was in this moment that the revelation came. Sarah saw that their stories were almost the same. She had lost her husband because of Michael Crow's greed. He had lost his brother for the same reason. She realized that they were both broken, but they had a chance at salvation. They were both alone, but now they had a common enemy. Sarah, barely a whisper, confessed that Isaac really did know about Michael Crow. He had talked about some secret book he always kept on the shelf. She had never known what that meant, but now she understood. The words burst from her, a confession she had held inside for so long. Caleb looked up, and a flicker of hope appeared in his eyes. It wasn't a reconciliation, nor was it a deal. It was the beginning of their alliance. They were no longer just two people trying to survive, but two broken souls who had found a foothold in each other. They realized that their revenge and their salvation were one and the same. From that moment on, they began to act as a family, one who protected, and the other who helped find the way. Sarah and Caleb searched for the secret book Isaac had mentioned. They found it in an old Bible he kept on a shelf. Inside, in a hollowed-out compartment, was an old map. It led to a hidden cache of gold, a small amount, but enough to attract the greedy Michael Crow. Now they understood that the gold wasn't just a treasure, but bait, for which Michael would return, leaving no witnesses behind. They had a plan. This became their shared purpose. They acted as a single unit. Sarah, who knew every creek and gully, and Caleb, who knew how to catch his prey. They set up an ambush on the outskirts of the farm. When Michael Crow appeared, he looked self-satisfied. He thought he was in the clear, and he was sure he was taking not just gold, but the last remnants of Isaac's family. But what awaited him was not a helpless witness, but a trap. A brief, tense firefight ended when Caleb wounded Michael. He fell, dropping his revolver. Caleb walked up to him. His eyes were cold, but his voice was calm. He told him firmly and calmly that he had come for him, Michael, and today, he was finally collecting his bounty. Michael begged for mercy, but treachery still burned in his eyes. Caleb didn't kill him. He simply tied him up and took him to town, handing him over to the authorities, as a bounty hunter should. He didn't get revenge. He got justice, and in this was his main reconciliation with the past. Returning to the farm, he saw that Sarah and the children were waiting for him. When he dismounted, Jamie ran up to him and hugged him tight. He whispered that Caleb had brought back their father, and brought back justice. Caleb, never used to being touched, stood motionless, his eyes full of tears. For the first time in years, A smile appeared on his face. He found not just a family, but a family that had chosen him. Sarah, holding Emma in her arms, walked up to him. She reached out to him, and then she hugged him. It wasn't a reconciliation, but the beginning of something new. They found in each other what they had been looking for, hope. He found a family, and she protection. And together they were able to overcome their past. Their story became a legend of two broken souls who found redemption, love, and new meaning in life, becoming each other's anchor in the turbulent sea of the Wild West.